ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਜੀ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ। ਆਈ ਹੋਪ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਠੀਕ-ਠਾਕ ਹੋਵੋਗੇ ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਰੈਡੀ ਹਾਂ ਜੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਬੁੱਕ ਪੜ੍ਹਨ ਲਈ 15 ਮਿੰਟ ਦੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਤੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਅਲਾਰਮ ਵੀ ਰੈਡੀ ਆ। ਸੋ ਬਿਨਾਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਡਿਲੇ ਦੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਬੁੱਕ ਪੜ੍ਹਨੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। After the shock, perhaps the pre-agrophobic woman leaves her house and makes her way to the shopping mall. It's busy and difficult to park. This makes her even more stressed. The thoughts of vulnerability occupying her mind since her recent unpleasant experience rise close to the surface. They trigger anxiety. Her heart rate rises. She begins to breathe slowly. She begins to breathe shallowly. She begins to breathe shallowly and quickly. She feels her heart racing and begins to wonder if she is suffering a heart attack. This thought triggers more anxiety. She breathes even more shallowly, increasing the levels of carbon dioxide in her blood. Her blood rate increases again because of her additional fear. She detects that her heart rate rises again. Poof! Positive feedback loop. Soon the anxiety transforms into panic, regulated by a different brain system designed for the severest of threats, which can be triggered by too much fear. She is overwhelmed by her symptoms and heads for the emergency room, where after an anxious wait, her heart function is checked. There is nothing wrong, but she is not reassured. It takes an additional feedback loop to transform even that unpleasant experience into full blown agoraphobia. The next time she needs to go to the mall, the pre agoraphobic becomes anxious, remembering what happened last time. But she goes anyway. On the way, she can feel her heart pounding. That triggers another cycle of anxiety and concern. To forestall packing, to forestall panic, she avoids the stress of the mall and returns home. But now the anxiety systems in her brain note that note that she ran away from the mall and conclude that the journey there was truly dangerous. Our anxiety systems are very practical. They assume that anything you run away from is dangerous. The proof of that is, of course, the fact you ran away. So now the mall is tagged too dangerous to approach, or the budding word is budding agrophobic has labeled herself too fragile to approach the mall. Perhaps that is not yet taking things far enough to cause her real trouble. There are other places to shop, but maybe the nearby market is more like enough to trigger a similar response when she visits it instead and then retreats. Now the supermarket occupies the same category. Then it's the cornerstone. Then it's buses and taxis and subways. Soon it's everywhere. The agrophobic will even eventually become afraid of her house and would run away from that if she could, but she can't. Soon she is stuck in her home. Anxiety induced retreat makes everything retreated from more anxiety induced retreat. What is retreat? Makes the self smaller and even and ever more dangerous world larger. There are many systems of interaction between brain, body, and social world that can get caught in a positive feedback loop. Depressed people, for example, can start feeling useless and burdensome as well as grief stricken and pained. This makes them withdraw from contact with friends and family. Then the withdrawal makes them more lonesome and isolated and more likely to feel useless and burdensome. Then they withdraw more. Word is withdraw. In this manner, depression spirals and amplifies. If someone is badly hurt at some point in life, traumatized, the dominance counter can transform in a manner that makes additional hurt more rather than less likely. This often happens in the case of people, now adults, who were viciously bullied during childhood or adolescence. They become anxious and easily upset. They shield themselves with a defensive crouch. What is crouch? And avoid the direct eye contact, interpretable as a dominance challenge. This means that the damage caused by the bullying, the lowering of status and confidence can continue even after the bullying has ended. In this simplest of cases, the formerly lowly persons have matured and moved to new and more successful places in their lives, but they don't fully notice. Their now counterproductive psychological adaptations to earlier reality remain, and they are more stressed and uncertain than is necessary. In more complex cases, a habitual assumption of subordination renders the person more stressed and uncertain than necessary, and their habitually submissive posturing continues to attract genuine negative attention from one or more of fewer and generally less successful bullies extant still extant in the adult world. In such situations, the psychological consequence of the previous bullying increases the likelihood of continued bullying in the present. Even though, strictly speaking, it wouldn't have to because of maturation. What is maturation? Or geographical relocation, or continued education or improvement in objective status. Sometimes people are bullied because they can't fight back. Sometimes people are bullied because they can't fight back. This can happen to people who are weaker physically than their opponents. This is one of the most common reasons for the bullying experienced by children. Even the toughest of 6-year olds is no match for someone who is 9. A lot that power differential disappears in adulthood, however, with the rough stabilization and matching of physical size, with the exception of that pertaining to men and women, with the former typical larger and stronger, particularly in the upper body, as well as the increased penalties generally applied in adulthood to those who insist upon continuing with physical intimidation. But just as often, people are bullied because they won't fight back. This happens not infrequently to people who are by temperament compassionate and self sacrificing, particularly if they are also high in negative emotion and make a lot of gratifying noises of suffering when someone sadistic, word is sadistic, confronts them. Children who cry more easily, for example, are more frequently bullied. It also happens to people who have decided, for one reason or another, that all forms of aggression, including even including feelings of anger, are morally wrong. I have seen people with a particularly acute sensitivity to petty tyranny and over-aggressive competitiveness restrict within themselves all the emotions that might give rise to such things. Often they are people whose fathers were excessively angry and controlling. Psychological forces are never unidimensional. What is unidimensional? I believe so. The pronunciation is correct. In their value, however, and the truly appalling potential of anger and aggression to produce cruelty and mayhem are balanced by the ability of those primordial, what is primordial, forces to push back against oppression, speak truth, and motivate resolute movement forward in times of strife, uncertainty, and danger. With their with their capacity of aggression, straight-jacketed. What is straight? Spellings are Strait. Jacketed within a too narrow morality, those who are only or merely compassionate and self-sacrificing and naive and exploitable cannot call forth the genuinely righteous and appropriately self-protective anger necessary to defend themselves. ये लाइन दोबारा पढ़ेंगे. With their capacity for aggression straitjacketed within a too narrow morality, those who are only or merely compassionate and self-sacrificing and naive and exploitable cannot call forth the genuinely righteous and appropriately self-protective anger necessary to defend themselves. If you can bite, you generally don't have to. When skillfully integrated, the ability to respond with aggression and violence decreases rather than increases the probability that actual aggression will become necessary. If you say no early in the cycle of oppression and you mean what you say, which means you state your refusal in no uncertain terms and stand behind it, then the scope for oppression on the part of oppressor will remain properly bounded and limited. The forces of tyranny, and expand inexorably. What is inexorably? To fill the space made available for their existence, people who refuse to muster, what is muster, appropriately self-protective territorial responses are laid open to exploitation as much as those who genuinely can't stand up for their own rights because of a more essential inability or a true imbalance in power. ये भी लाइन दोबारा पढ़ेंगे. People who refuse to muster, word देखना पड़ेगा कि muster का की मीनिंग है. Muster appropriately self-protective territorial responses are laid open to exploitation as much as those who genuinely can't stand up for their own rights because of a moral essential inability or a true imbalance in power. Naive. Naive means inexperienced. Harmless people usually guide their perceptions and actions with a few simple axioms. What is axioms? People are basically good. No one really wants to hurt anyone else. No one really wants to hurt anyone else. The threat and certainly the use of force, physical or otherwise, is wrong. These axioms collapse, or worse, in the presence of individuals who are generally malevolent. What is malevolent? Worse means that naive beliefs can become a positive invitation to abuse because those who aim to harm have become specialized to prey on people who think precisely such things. Under such conditions, the axioms of harmlessness must be retooled. In my clinical practice, I often draw the attention of my clients who think that good people never become angry to the stark own realities of their own resentment. ਓਕੇ ਜੀ ਸੋ ਇੱਥੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਟਾਈਮ ਆ ਉਹ ਫਿਨਿਸ਼ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਆ ਤੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਪੈਰਾ ਵੀ ਫਿਨਿਸ਼ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਕੱਲ ਆਪਾਂ ਪੜਾਂਗੇ 24 ਨੰਬਰ ਪੇਜ ਤੋਂ ਥੱਲਿਓਂ ਦੂਜਾ ਪੈਰਾਗ੍ਰਾਫ, ਜੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਬੁੱਕ ਨੂੰ ਨਾ ਪੜ੍ਹੀਏ ਡੇਲੀ ਫੋਰ ਆਪਾਂ 15 ਮਿੰਟ ਪੜ੍ਹਦੇ ਪਏ 24 ਘੰਟਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ, ਤਾਂ ਹੁਣ ਮੈਂ 24 ਪੇਜ ਤੇ ਪੜ੍ਹ ਲਏ ਆ। ਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਵਧੀਆ ਸਪੀਡ ਆ, ਠੀਕ ਹੈ, ਨਾਲੇ ਸਮਝ ਵੀ ਲੱਗਦੀ ਪਈ ਆ ਬੁੱਕ ਕਿੱਧਰ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਹੜੀ ਡਾਇਰੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਪਈ ਆ। ਸੋ ਰਾਦਰ ਦੈਨ ਕਿ ਇੱਕੋ ਦਿਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਾਂ ਇਕੱਠੇ 10-15 ਪੇਜ ਪੜ੍ਹ ਲਈਏ, ਜੇ ਡੇਲੀ ਦੇ ਰੂਟੀਨ ਹੋਵੇ ਤਾਂ ਆਈ ਬਲੀਵ ਦੈਟ ਇਟ ਇਜ਼ ਵੈਰੀ ਫਰੂਟਫੁਲ, ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਅੰਡਰਸਟੈਂਡਿੰਗ ਵੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇਨਕਰੀਜ਼ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਪਈ ਆ। ਸੋ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਆਪਾਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਹੀ ਕਲੋਜ਼ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਮਿਲਾਂਗੇ ਜੀ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਦੀ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ। ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਸੋ ਮਚ ਫॉर ਵਾਚਿੰਗ।